Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast. I'm your host, Katie Ott, occupational therapist and PATH International CTRI at HETRA in Gretna, Nebraska. And though I am in Nebraska, I am joined from several friends from all over the country and the world today. So I am excited to hear from each of our guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves before we get kicked off here. So, Tamara, do you want to get started and tell us a little about who you are and where you hail from?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Katie. We're excited to be on your podcast. I'm a big fan. Um, I am from Colorado. I'm the Director of Program Innovation and Research at Hearts and Horses, and we're located in Loveland, Colorado, Northern Colorado. I have been working in this industry since 1990. And so I've worn a lot of different hats. This current hat that I'm wearing, I am just thrilled to be um, able to kind of quantify what we've been seeing all these years in the work that we do with research. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Corey?
Yeah, Katie, great to be here. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk with all of you. I'm an associate professor at Baylor University, and I focus on neurophysiological monitoring on multiple different types of populations. And what I'm excited to be talking about today is the great work that Tamara and I and our team are doing, looking at the way that the brains are changing in these kids with autism over time. And so I look forward to talking with you and sharing some of this with your listeners.
Awesome. And last but not least, Miss Claire.
Hi, I'm Dr. Claire Thomas-Pino. I'm a senior lecturer at Hartpury University, which is in the UK. I run a master's in animal-assisted counselling and psychotherapy and an undergraduate program in human-animal interaction with psychology. But I've actually been involved with HHRF since its inception back in 2004, and I am now chair of scientific advisory and on the board of directors.
Wonderful. Okay. We have a very robust lineup of folks who are very knowledgeable in their industry and our industry as well. So, um, I think overall today, what I'm really looking forward to hearing about, number one, is some of the research that's actually happening currently right now, which is incredible. And that is through help and partnership and funding from HHRF. And so we couldn't have opportunities like that without some of those funding research. Or funding for that research and partnership. But I also would like to pick each of your brain on sort of the need and value for researchers, so even researchers like yourself, Corey, where you're not, maybe directly involved in the EAS community every day. Maybe you are, haven't heard from you yet, but your that's really your hat that you wear so well, and the need for like researchers and folks to connect with their community, with practitioners, with professionals to make this research happen. I think that's something that I'm looking forward to hearing all of you speak on today in your expertise. So, yeah, let's get started. I want to hear a little about this research that is happening and how it got started and kind of why. Tamara, do you want to tell us about it a little?
Sure. I think looking back, Corey, I think we started our partnership quite some time ago. Initially, we were both working on a project with Dr. Robin Gabriels on a big NIH-funded randomized controlled trial that we were hosting at Hearts and Horses. Was a multi-site study, and Corey was kind of helping with the physiology on that study, and this idea to be able to look at brain activation with children with autism. And so I think in 23, we started applying for funding, and we tried from a number of different sources. But maybe, Corey, you could speak and give some specifics on the research.
Yeah, Tamara. Yeah, gosh, it's crazy. It's been since 2023 since we've been going after this, and excited it's come to fruition, especially with HHRF's support and backing for all this, because really we're the first team to be doing what we're doing. So no one's really looked at what goes on in real time while they're, we're in EAS, and what's going on in the brains, and is it even possible? And so it was a high risk study, which was what kind of had us struggle getting funding, I think, in the first place. A lot of the big funding agencies want to see big success, want to see guaranteed success, and
Guaranteed, yeah.
HHRF, yeah, right, Katie. So HHRF took a swing, and I gotta say, with Tamara's help, the balance that we have has allowed us to go beyond what we expected, even. And so the amount of data, the information that we're getting, the lessons we're learning, not just on our study alone, but how to move the research in this field forward and bring together these partnerships. Because as you kind of mentioned, Katie, I am not in the EAS world day in and day out whatsoever. I was brought in with a very big support system from Robin and Tamara, and so it's very exciting.
What got you interested in this field? I think sometimes researchers they kind of have like their niche, right? Like I'm really interested in learning more about the autism community or population, or I'm really interested in learning about how, EAS impacts participants of all diagnoses or disability. Did it kind of come full circle to you, or how did, what's your love in this part of the research?
Yeah, so my love of understanding the brain is
Mhm.
huge in how things work. But really, this was an unexpected find and passion that's just been absolutely fantastic. Where they were looking for a physiologist that could do some of this dynamic work and understand what was going on. And so once Tamara and Robin engaged me in Robin's large NIH clinical trial, seeing the impact that EAS has on these kids was just hugged at the heartstrings. The stories that you hear, the things, and I've never been around it before in my life. And
Mm.
so to see it, that was that moment that was like, oh, let's do another study on this. And let's see if we can add some of, the things that I do into this field.
Incredible. So Tamara, was this sort of something you had been thinking about for a long time? I wonder how this happens. I'm just very interested in how research comes to fruition, right? Because it's sort of everyday folks that are doing some of this work, right? And we're like, I wonder why this happens, And it just takes somebody to make a connection or make a spark to really want to drive forward more in that why. So I guess I'm sort of curious about how that started for you.
Yeah, I think at Hearts and Horses, we've been hosting research and we've been, site coordinating for over 10 years with a lot of different studies. And um, I think that it's all about relationship in terms of how to build these teams. So certainly in academia and in the horse world, we all know there can be ego, everywhere. And I think what is beautiful about certainly this partnership that we have with Corey and Dr. Gabriels and Sarah Matlock, who we haven't spoken of, is the equine behaviorist who is actually, I think, on your scientific advisory council, Claire, with you with HHRF. But basically, we started initial connections with a number of different local researchers at Hearts and Horses, like I said, over 10 years ago. And when we were able to partner and quantify what we've been seeing all these years, whether it's, a child with autism who says their first word on the back of the horse, or, a child with autism who all of a sudden starts to learn to ride their bike and they've been trying to learn to ride their bike for 5 years, we see these changes, and to be able to partner with the researchers to quantify that is really, really something. And as a center now that is hosting big, multi-site studies, we've learned a lot, and we see the benefit at Hearts and Horses for building these great partnerships between, our center and researchers, not just for our participants, but it raises the bar with our staff's ability to understand, and our volunteers and stakeholders in terms of funding. So over the years, we have just learned so much and see that this is a great benefit to our industry to be hosting research.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me a little, give me the, cliff notes on Hearts and Horses. It sounds like y'all have grown and you're involved now directly in this research. I mean, you have a position that's, sounds like primarily the hat you wear, right? Is advancing that knowledge. And so tell me a little bit about your organization and what you guys do.
Yeah, we have a 23-acre farm in northern Colorado. We have been around since, I guess we'll be celebrating our 30th year next year. So we've been around
Congratulations.
for a long time, just like you guys at HETRA. We have a variety of specialty programs. So we have a veterans program, we have a youth at risk program, we have a program for individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia, and a therapy services program where our OTs and PTs come out and work with our clients. So lots of different programs. And we have a herd of 30 equines right now. So it's a busy place. So
Yeah.
knowing that it's a busy place and that we don't want to lose sight of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, layering in the research can be challenging. I feel honored to be to wear the hat of being that point person, being the logistics coordinator to host the research. I think that is one thing that has moved the needle for us, is having a dedicated person that really does the interacting with the researchers and hearing what their goals are, and then they get to hear how we can work together to advance the science.
Absolutely. I can speak a little from experience. We were also in a large NIH funded study and with excuse me, educational with Creighton in our area. And it is a lot. And I think in EAS, there's so many of us wearing so many hats, right? I'm the volunteer coordinator, I'm the program director, I'm the, this or that or whatever. That it's a big bite to take off when we talk about doing research. It's like we're barely keeping our head above water to just, serve our participants because that's what we want to do. How are we also going to do research, right? So I'd be interested to hear maybe from each of you on your thoughts on that. How do we encourage equine-assisted services professionals, I mean any professional really, any practitioner, to continue to do research and all the stuff we're asking them to do every day, right?
I'm going to take that one because I worked
Please.
with IAHIO, on whose board I'm also a trustee, uh, with a brand new set of research guidelines that we've come out with for human-animal bond, human-animal interaction, and animal-assisted services, basically for worldwide use. And one of the things that we all looked at, first of all, the team was of 54 people, a mixture of researchers, practitioners, center providers, educators, all sorts of things from around the world. And what was really core to our understanding, and what to me has kept me embedded within HHRF, is the premise that actually there's a lot of research that's been done in this field that sadly can sit in a silo or on a piece of paper and make absolutely no impact on the people who are providing or the potential for people to receive these services. And HHRF, at its inception back in 2004, our main aim was to ensure that anybody could access these services, that we could actually support through fundraising for our research projects, studies that had the gravitas that people would listen, that funders, that HMOs in the US, that other commissioning agents in other parts of the world would actually take seriously and say, okay, I can see that this is actually beneficial. And I think that's really the key, is acknowledging that researchers are not necessarily the experts in all of this. Practitioners on the ground, they have what we call multiple case studies. They haven't been formalized, but they have tremendous amounts of experience of seeing consistent transformations in the people they work with. That has value. And I think what we've tended to do is sort of impose this external scientific bias that science is fabulous, but practitioners have no value. And we all work incredibly hard in all the things we do, and we all wear multiple hats. But to be acknowledged for the significance of your contribution and the essential nature of your participating in this research process, I think can support people in recognizing that, yes, I do need to sort of eke out a little bit of time. And then perhaps we have that mutually beneficial relationship where, as the research increases in supporting the work people are doing in practice, their funding also increases to such an extent that they can hire somebody for 1 day, 2 day, full time as that coordinator and link person between practice and research. So again, in that Ohio guidelines, it's essential that a practitioner be involved not just at the end dissemination point, but at every step of the way through considering what research should be done, through designing methodology, refining it, and then making sure that the information not only gets out to the academic communities, but to practitioners and mostly back out to the public. Because I think we'll have this great opportunity where information might get out to researchers, it might get out to practitioners, but if we don't sort of get out to the media what is happening and the amazing work that researchers like Corey are doing, what good is this? Because it doesn't change the minds and it doesn't change the flow of money and the flow of transformation in healthcare and education systems to support people with needs that are not being met by business as usual. And yet these transformative experiences can really make a huge difference for.
Incredible. You're absolutely right. I think that piece of research where we do all the work, we get it done, it's finalized, it's published even, and then what? Right? It goes to the journal and there it sits until someone reads it, right? And how often is that happening? People don't thumb medical journals like they do the newspaper, if they even do the newspaper anymore, right? So Corey, I would be interested to hear your feedback on that as a primary researcher here.
Yeah, Claire's viewpoints, everything they're doing is spot on. I 100%. I think that as the researcher, it feels funny in these large projects like this where we have so many, hands-on, and it's really all about the patient incomes and patient, responses that are happening. The researcher sometimes and sometimes, and I feel this way, this kind of secondary. We're getting that data to support the things that they're seeing and that they're understanding, and it's all about disseminating that in a way that makes sense. And one of the barriers that I think we've done a really good job with, especially with Tamara's help, being part of this research team from its inception and the design of these studies from the inceptions, is exactly what Chris said. Is it's going to translate to the practitioners, it's going to translate to the families, and so it's going to hit all of those different levels. And that's really the value of having partnerships with places like Hearts and Horses. For a researcher, I don't have to know everything, and it's impossible for us to know everything. We rely on these experts to truly bridge these gaps, and that allows me just to focus on the thing I'm good at. And I rely on them 100% to translate this in a more meaningful way, because who else is better equipped to do that than the experts? And so I agree full heartedly, and I think that's where the future is combining these fields. I think the siloed effect that a lot of traditional research has is one of the things holding it back. We can't have silos. We can't have egos. We all just have to, huddle around the purpose of making a positive impact on these individuals.
And one soapbox I think that I have is that it's a very unique person that bridges that gap, I think. It's somebody that can understand and digest the research a little bit, maybe not as, as a heady as maybe you would digest it, Corey, but we also need someone on the other side of it that understands the functional piece. So who's going to take, translate it from the researcher to the community? I think that is kind of a unique person, and maybe they have that. Definitely, it sounds like Corey in Hearts and Horses and the staff there. Tamara, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I love what both you, Corey, said and Claire, you said in terms of these partnerships can really look different. And I see it as sort of this continuum, right? Where on one end of the continuum, the researchers come in with the design already put together. They approach the therapeutic, the EAS center, and they say, this is what I want to study, right? So there's sort of the traditional end of that continuum. Whereas I think our study that is currently being funded through Horses and Humans is a great example of more of this participatory. So where there's this back and forth, and as Corey mentioned, right from the beginning with the design, I think two examples that I could highlight with this study in particular. So Corey came with this amazing idea, right, to look at the brains of children real time on horseback. And one thing that I was curious about as a practitioner that I think we see is what elements of the session, of an hour-long session, are most therapeutic, or what are we getting? We oftentimes will see that if we have a highly dysregulated child, we might increase the pace of the horse. And does that help regulate the child, right? And so what we were able to do in the design is say, I'm curious about the therapeutic elements of this lesson, from the warm-up to the stretching. We always start our class with what's called a silent stride, where there's, I see it as like this transition time between getting out of the car, and who knows what school's been like for these kiddos. And so we allow them one or two laps of just silent. We call it the silent stride, where there's not an ask of them. They're just tuning into the movement of the horse, and it sets the stage for their participation in the class, right? And so what we've done, and I think Corey has operationalized, like, okay, we're going to look at all these different therapeutic elements of the lesson. We're putting a timestamp on each one, and we're going to see what's happening real time during the stretches, during the lesson activity, during whatever the target riding skill is, because we're teaching riding skills, right? That is what we're doing in these lessons. So that's one example of how me as a practitioner, not as a researcher, I was able to say to this very humble team, you guys, I'm really curious about this. Like, is there anything we could do to track the therapeutic components of the lesson? That's one example. Another example is, the team came in with this idea of looking at equine physiology, right? And the physiology of the child on the horse, and is there some co-regulation that happens there? We know that this can happen. And I asked the question, is there any way that we could look at the physiology of the horse leader? Because I see a lot of connection, right, with that relationship that's built between the horse leader and the horse, which I'm curious. I don't know. Is that more important than what's happening with the child on the back of the horse? I don't know. Let's look at it. And Corey and his team they were like, we have this equipment. Let's put it on the horse leader too, right? And so I think that's a great example of this sort of back and forth collaborative nature of the study that we're currently doing that is just so exciting. And, I see the four of us as, Corey certainly being at the top of his field, right? Robin with Dr. Gabriel's with her work with children with autism, Sarah Matlock as an equine behaviorist. Like, it's sort of like the dream team, right? Because we all are curious and humble and work really well together. So
Mhm.
anyway, there's an
I love
example.
Yeah, absolutely. Without that conversation to it, you're right, it becomes more one-sided. And I don't know that this was the case. I'm just using this as a theoretical example. But, maybe Corey would have come in and just said, yeah, we're going to monitor this. We're not going to look at them with timestamps and we're just going to see what happens, at the end. And that would have been incredibly valuable research. But because you came in and said, wonder about, these different segments of my lesson, just as any, practitioner might have had that curiosity, right? But because you were able to voice that to your team and you were able to work in that collaborative environment, now we're going to have this incredible, you know, just I don't know how to explain it. Like it could be like you were talking about the silent stride, and I was thinking to myself as you were talking about that, what if you guys find that that's the most regulating part of your lesson and that becomes something everybody does now across the country because you have research on it or something. It's like that's how we make changes, And if you guys find, let's just say theoretically, that's what you find, how do you tell everyone we found this and everyone should do it? Right? It's disseminating that to other folks and doing important things like going to the HHRF conference or, getting out there and talking about what you're doing that's going to help your research apply to everybody else around the world and around the country. It's incredible. Claire, I'm curious a little bit about your thoughts. So Corey talked a little bit about how this study was a little bit, quote unquote, more high risk because it wasn't a guarantee. This is something that not a lot of people have studied, but HHRF was like, you know what? Let's do it. No matter what we find. I think that has incredible value as well. So I don't know if you could speak to that a little bit, especially with, the work with SAC and all of that.
Absolutely. I think what's really important is the progression of HHRF's requirements for research have moved over time, and it's been really beautiful to see how they've moved from predominantly focusing on people, much as most of the literature looks at, to really valuing that simultaneous recognition of the horses, but also, as Tamara pointed out, other people in the
Yeah.
spaces, and really thinking about that incredible opportunity there. And that sort of equine well-being has really pushed right through. It was something that was evident in the application that Corey and the team put in. And when we sort of filter through our systems, lots of people put in applications, and then we go through, we check whether or not people have actually adhered to the requirements. And as we put in that people had to simultaneously look at horses and people at the same time, I will say there were a lot of people who didn't do that. So that kind of, they don't get through to the next phase. But I guess because we're smaller, but also we tend to think we don't have a lot of money as a funding organization. We want to go for something that is really innovative
Mhm.
and that has potential to make a difference. And what we saw in this application was a study it had obviously been co-created, again, another key component of our requirements. But it was something that, although it was being applied to autistic populations, we could see being applied not only to wider equine-assisted services opportunities, but also to the wider human-equine interaction experience. And I think that was really key. And it was incorporating really innovative technology in the way that this is being measured. But what was beautiful was the attention to detail. So one of the things we all discussed at the time was how there'd been tremendous thought because people with autism, many people are really uncomfortable with any form of equipment on them.
Right.
And yet the children at the centres were used to wearing a riding helmet. And it was how do you position these sensors to measure the brain waves in a way that's actually almost imperceivable to the child from a conventional helmet.
Yeah.
And that was part of the methodology that was presented to us and that Corey so eloquently spoke about when he came and presented to the board. And then again, the same was applied to the horses in thinking about how do we put sensors on the horses so that they don't feel it's an added piece of burden. It's something very familiar and similar to what they're already used to. So again, it was that level of attention to detail that to us was incredibly important. And we're also really quite aware that research is always a gamble, particularly in something innovative like this. And you have to take those leaps of faith. We don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's been interesting again, because we know that with opening up that sphere for looking at the impact on the horses of this work or of any form of human equine interaction, we do sort of ponder whether or not somebody's going to come out with research that says actually this is harmful to horses.
Mm.
And what do we do with that? And it's been beautiful to work with an organization that says, well, then we'll think about how are we doing this? Is this the right thing to do? And that's fine. We're not trying to quash it. We're not trying to pretend it doesn't exist. And it's also been interesting for me, sort of on the wider sort of scale of things, looking at how much animal assisted services and equine assisted services have changed over the 30 plus years I've been involved or interested in them, from very much a hands-on, a ridden work, to recognizing that actually this work can be done in the field, and again valuing the role of the practitioner as that key component in making that meaningful opportunity for change within the clients people are working with.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that, you know, research is a gamble and it very well could prove something that is opposite of what we thought. And being okay with that and saying, okay, now what? What do we do to make the change? Or now what do we research? I don't know, Corey, if you have any feedback on that as a researcher, where you go into something thinking this is what we're going to find, and what if we don't? And how do you handle that sort of, dichotomous feeling?
Yeah, that's always something that we're, very cognizant and thinking about, right? And for me, it's a lot of the perspective, and it comes back to, I think, really it's the teaming that's going on that's really leading to this being positive. That I don't think anyone in our team, myself included, went into this thinking we knew exactly what we're going to find. We had our hypothesis, we kind of gave our best guess, but we went into it with open eyes, open ears, open hearts on it, and just was let this tell us things that we don't know, let us learn. And so I think that being open to it, because if it does show something that was unexpected, for instance, or then now we know, though it's better than not knowing and not being able to, because now we can start addressing it, we can start spreading that word. And I think the work that we've been able to do with support of HHRF, of expanding the measures that we're getting. And I don't know personally of any other study that's looking simultaneously at the rider, the horse, and the leader all at the same time across these 10 weeks, and quantifying all of these changes. And so that data alone poses new problem sets that we weren't expecting, and ones that we've proposed and that we're trying to overcome and challenge, which is, how do you look at the synchrony between them truly when they're so different in physiology, different things like that? And so those things do come up. But I think ultimately with all of us, we just all want to do good and help people, and make sure that the horses are happy and healthy, and that it's this symbiotic relationship between everyone. And so as long as I think we go in with that mindset, especially with the researchers and the practitioners, that's what's going to allow us to address it, versus it being oh no, something is not okay. We
Mm-hmm.
can.
And it takes a long time to connect all the dots, right? It's not just you go in for the 6 weeks and then you look at the data and voila, right? There's a lot of nuanced science that goes into making all the connections and really truly like understanding it and getting a good, um, just a really good feel for what for sure did happen. And I think like you guys can speak to, you applied for funding, you said in 2023, right? And you're in active research now. I mean, how long do you think until you have some real meat to chew on as far as results?
Oh, so I'm excited. The end of this year. The end of this year, we will have some. We've already started our data pathways. We've started all those different things, and we have some time slotted. We're getting ready. I'm so excited. We're starting our next cohort in a month, and so yeah, and so we're gonna have enough data to start to really disseminate and share by the end of this year. And one of the things is that I would really like to emphasize is the importance of spreading the knowledge of how we did this. The
Hmm.
importance of Hearts and Horses and HHRF and the open communications and the understanding and the teamwork. The how I, how my team does the physiological measures. It's the first time in the EAS world that I've ever seen it. And I want to share all of that. I don't think anyone on this team wants to hold anything close. We want to, shout at the rooftop, share it with everyone, teach anyone and everyone that's interested to do this teaming approach and physiological approach all at once. And so I'm hoping by the end of this year, you'll see some things start to come out about all of our projects we've been working on.
Do you have any advice for maybe practitioners, EAS professionals listening right now that are thinking, wow, I would really like to partner with someone like at Baylor University or at a, maybe they have a institution in their area or researchers in their area they'd like to connect with, but feeling a little overwhelmed by it all. Do you have any suggestions or advice?
Yeah, I think for them, the biggest thing is to find those people that are passionate, open-minded, and aren't siloed like, Claire and Tamara kind of mentioned before. And finding that's going to be is and they're abundant, right? And so ultimately it's approaching them with a problem set. And I think that's one thing that can get a lot of researchers excited, which is exactly what got me excited. I was approached with a problem set that I didn't know existed, but I
Mhm.
had some tool sets to address. And the only way that that came across was from Tamra. And that's how the study evolved and changed and became exactly what it is today. I arguably had the least thumbprint on this project because why would I? And so I think that bringing those problem sets in an open mind, saying, hey, this is what it is, and knowing the right things to ask the researchers sometimes, because we can get very carried away. I'll tell you right now, we can spiral up, we get excited. Katie, I can tell you're laughing. You're like, yep, I've seen it. Sometimes you need to operationally define where it needs to be and say, hey, this is what we're doing. And that's what they did with me. And that's what I wanted. And so when they said, this is what we do with our, individuals, this is exactly what translates to the way we provide care, and explaining the rationale behind why and educating the researcher about that makes us not go and force our study design on the writing center. It makes me go and the researchers go to the writing center and say, hey, what's the problem set? What can I do to help you? And that's
Mm.
really what it is. It's the researchers need to view themselves as being, providing the service to the practitioners. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things is the practitioners are so used to being the ones that are providing the service.
Oh, yeah. Is it sort of divine timing? I mean, with you as a researcher, or is there kind of a selection process for you guys as well? I mean, obviously, you research the human brain. There's a brilliant different things you could research. Was it sort of divine timing when Hearts and Horses came to you and said, hey, this is our problem? You got time? You want to help us, Or do you guys kind of have a selection process? Do you work on several projects at once?
Yeah, for my team, we work on several, very, quite a few projects at once. We definitely are busy, and I think that this is one that it wasn't. I don't think really. Tamara saying we want us to study this. They've been wanting to know this forever, right, Tamara?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it came organically. And that was the thing. So for us, it wasn't a decision of the selection process. It was almost like we would be doing wrong if we did not do
We
this.
have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great relationship to have. Tamara, do you have any thoughts on kind of the process or, maybe advice you would give someone? I know this is your heart, this is your, your bread and butter, from someone who's been in the industry a while. Do you have any advice for anyone?
Yeah, I think that seeing partnering with researchers as such an opportunity, right? And I think one of the things that I'd like to share is that, over the years, through these partnerships, the research has informed what we do, and we actually change what we've done based off of the results of some of these research studies that we've hosted at Hearts and Horses. And so that research has impacted the day-to-day work that we are doing. Okay. I mean, a good example from this last NIH study, where we were having kids come and they were riding, children with autism riding. And then we had another group that was not receiving any horse time. They had a large stuffed horse, but they were learning all about horses. They were grooming the large stuffed horse and they were tacking up the large stuffed horse. 10 weeks of no touch time with horses. Well, interestingly, both groups had benefits, right? So both groups had decreases in irritability and hyperactivity. Now, the horse group, they had a bigger change with hyperactivity, right? But that ground group, the group of students that had no horse interaction, they benefited. And so, you know what we did? We started a full-on ground program
Mm-hmm.
uh, called Shared Ground. And it's research informed, right? So we saw that there were benefits for students to come out to the barn. They do have interaction with horses, but there's not a riding component, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another example, we did a research project with Colorado State University on our full day school program, and we were initially one of the assessments, they were looking at anxiety and depression. Well, we were really teaching in our full day school program, we weren't targeting anxiety and depression in these kids. We were targeting social emotional competencies, right? And so one of the measures showed very significant changes. The DESA showed significant changes in social emotional competencies with these youth with a 8-week intervention. And so learning that we didn't get as much of a change with like the anxiety and depression measure, we realized, well, that's not really what we're focusing on in this program, right? And so it changed the way we are quantifying what we do. And we do that for program evaluation, even when it's not part of a research project. So we are now looking at very specific SEL measures for pre-post to see how the self-assessments for the kids. And we're seeing huge changes, right, in that. And it's because we clearly defined what it is that we're doing with this full day school program.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned that from the research, and it's
Right.
changed the way we operate our programming.
And the way that that has changed your outcome measures for those programs. And then then we apply for grants and, this program looks so good. And then here comes the funding. And then we're back to where, Claire was speaking about how it builds on itself, right? It's like you have to find the staff time to do the research, to pay for the staff time, to get more fund, and it just keeps layering.
Exactly.
So for you, Claire, or excuse me, Tamara, is there any, what's your, let's see, how do I want to say it? Like, do you have a recipe for disseminating some of this stuff to your other staff, right? So you as the point person for research and, in innovative education, how do you disseminate this to your staff and say, this is what we found, so this is how, we want to do it or we want to try it? Is there some kind of secret sauce to that to help everyone get the buy-in with it?
I think that it's what's important is to not be a silo within your organization and make
Yeah.
sure that everybody is really ready for research. Okay. So like the program is ready for research and there's buy-in from staff, volunteers, the board, of course. It's really important. There's a funding piece that comes into this, right, in hosting research. And so there has to be buy-in from everyone. And so it's really getting the team excited. So I have to say, Corey, remember we did the big group sharing before the research started. Corey came out and we had this launch event, right, where we invited everybody that was going to be participating, board, some of our donors, the volunteers, the staff, and Corey just did this beautiful job of getting people so excited about this. I mean, I have to say that after that event, people were just like, I want to be part of this. How can I help? And it's a delicate dance in the organization to make sure that the research isn't getting a bad name because we're taking arena space during prime time operations, or that we're diverting attention from other things. And so it's definitely a lot to navigate, but I think we have figured out how to do it well. And it's really just those open lines of communication. And I think having one point person is kind of key, right? So if there's an issue with a horse, I don't I deliver that issue to my equine team. I don't there's not 5 different people talking with Corey, right? And because then it just gets so complicated.
Right.
So having one point person, I think, is really, really key. And then at the end of the study, I'm sure we don't have a date for this yet, right, Corey? But I'm sure we will do a big open forum sharing, right? And that's where we can invite participants and their families and everyone from the community. We're actually doing that event for Dr. Gabriel's last NIH study on May 18th at Hearts and Horses. So we're doing a big just public sharing to get the word out on what we've learned from this study. And I'm sure we'll do the same with Corey's study when the time is right.
I love that. That is something that I think we have yet to do with the research that we've done at HETRA, because it was so compounding. It was like, we're going to take this and study this data set, and then we're going to look at this data set. And there was so much going on within our study, similarly to what yours was with like your horse leader and your horse and your participant, how all those pieces go together. But I think especially it might be fun for the participants who are involved in the study. I mean, heck, thank you for your time and your willingness to donate, your experience to let us research it. And here's what we found. I think that even though they're not a medical, they're maybe not a physician or someone who's going to pay us insurance, or, you think about all these like big stakeholders in research, but they're a big stakeholder too, the participants that were in the study. And I think that's a cool part of the dissemination process that shouldn't be overlooked. Definitely.
I think the other thing on dissemination that we've done is we were using manualized approaches for all of these studies, right? And so we have basically made these manuals available for our community on our website. And so there's 3 different manuals. We've been working with the University of Wisconsin for over 10 years on our Riding in the Moment program. There's a manual on our website that is looking at how to develop a program for individuals with dementia. There's a Changing Leads manual for full day school program. There's the autism manual that we're using for Corey's study right now, all available on our website.
Amazing. Point people to your website. I'll also put it in the show notes for folks to click and link, but if they're looking for those, where can they go?
So on our Hearts and Horses website, there's an education tab, and under education, you'll see those manuals that are available. Yeah, the Changing Leads Full Day School one, there's a teaser on there because that is going to be available at the end of May. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you guys are sharing those resources. Thank you to Hearts and Horses for doing this research for our industry. It's incredible that you guys are willing to share not only the research that you're doing, but then turning that research into functional things that we can have to digest, like these resource manuals. And that's incredible. So thank you. All
Thank you.
right. I have kept all of you for long enough, although I could keep you longer. This is a fun thing for me to talk about. I could talk about all day. But as we go and kind of, part ways here, I want to touch base again with each of you to see if you have any lasting thoughts for those that are listening or, just kind of things that have come up as we've talked today. Claire, do you have any parting thoughts?
I do. I think, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me and HHRF to be part of this. One of the things I think, well, multiple things have come up, but one of the things that I think is so important is all of this is only possible with donations to organizations like HHRF to keep us funding these really innovative research projects that really explore the depth and understanding between horse and human interactions, but also the essential nature of having that open communication, flexibility, and moving beyond the silos that often people are being in, and recognizing the value that each person within the experience of research has. And that does, as you said, include all the participants, but also the wider public. And I think one of the things we all need to work on is how we get out to that wider public, what's being done, what we understand, and how much more we need to do.
Absolutely. And I want to take a moment also to thank the HHRF for all that they do for our community for research, but for genuinely being a place for people to be curious, no matter what, no matter what the outcome is, right? We talked about that, but just genuinely being just curious about what's going on in our industry. And HHRF has always been a very safe place, I think, for everybody to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Corey, any lasting or parting thoughts as a researcher?
Yeah, when you were talking about the dissemination, all I was thinking of is this podcast, these conversations, the engagement with HHRF and putting those things out there. I think that is just speaks volumes to it, and continuing having the opportunity to do this from the scientific community and the practitioners is going to be everything. And I want to just extend my thanks to you, to Hearts and Horses, HHRF. None of this would have been possible without everyone being on board and involved. And those that want to, get into this research or are in this research, are looking to expand, collaborate, reach out, take into those, information and expertise of the practitioners and the writing centers and leverage them. And with that, I think we'll make huge strides in the years to come.
Absolutely. Tamara?
I guess I would say, from a practitioner point of view, embrace this, embrace research. If you have an opportunity or if you're curious about something, figure out a way to be able to engage people in your community. It really raises the bar of what you're doing at your center in such a significant way for everyone involved. It creates higher quality programming for your participants and education for your volunteers and your staff, and can increase funding by just showing how the work that you're doing is really making an impact, and it's validating it. So be open to it, have an open mind, and look for those partnerships where, like what we have with this partnership, which is just humble curiosity, I guess I would say.
Absolutely. I would just add to that you don't have to be like in the medical community. You don't have to be, you can just be curious and partner and find someone to help partner with you for research, right? I think some people get like, oh, I could never, or I couldn't, it wouldn't be me, I don't have the education or the degree or whatever people think they need, but you don't. You just have to be curious. And I think that's important too.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for sitting down with me and giving me an hour of your time to do this. I know you're all very busy, so thank you. And I'm sure I'll see you down the road. I cannot wait to see the research.
That's all for today, but until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by HHRF University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska. HHRF University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to the EAS community. Check out all the HHRF University has to offer at www.hetrauniversity.org.